Shalom, this is Rabbi Sachs. Welcome to the Chai Academy and welcome to the Chai Center. The Chai Academy is a plethora of classes that we've started when COVID started, and many topics, myriad of topics of Jewish interest. And for the past couple of weeks, we have been focusing on modern day Israel. So, we started at 48 or pre 48, and right now we're holding Menachem Begin, his rise to fame. Well, he was always famous in 1977. So basically, from the time Israel declared independence in 48 until 1977, the Labour Party, they ruled. So what does it mean they ruled? Is that there are 120 seats in the Israeli parliament, and a certain amount, let's say 1,000 back then, maybe it was 10,000 a seat, and so they got 50 seats, for example, Labour, and then they made deals with other parties until they got to 61 or more. And election after election after election, the Labour Party won. The Labour Party did not, they excluded communists from their bloc. They also excluded Herut. They excluded, which was eventually became Likud. Right? So there's two, it's almost like Democrats exclude Republicans, Republicans exclude Democrats. So, but it works differently because of you can forge alliances with other smaller parties. So, for all those years, for 19 years essentially, the party was ruled by the Labour Party, and then the shocker happened, and it was a shock to the country. Is that in 1977, Menachem Begin won. Menachem Begin was the leader of the Likud party. The Likud party was basically together with Herut and General Zionists forged together, and they created a party. Now, why did they win? They won for a few reasons. Sephardim. The Sephardic Jews, basically, they were also kind of put to the wayside. Now I think in Israel there's more Sephardim than Ashkenazim. Definition of a Sephardi is if you live in those Middle Eastern countries, specifically around the Mediterranean, you consider it a Sephardi. So the likes of of Ben Gurion and the likes of all those founders of Israel, right? They looked down on Sephardim. Right, and some horror stories, which we don't have to go into now, but they looked down on Sephardim. And so when Begin, so the Sephardim, they aligned themselves more with Begin, because Begin was more welcoming. In addition to Sephardim, Begin, the religious parties, religious Jews, they sided more with Begin than they did the Labour Party. So those are two very important blocks, and by the way, they're very important blocks today. Today, you cannot form a government if you don't have the Shas Party, Sfarim, you don't have the Aguda Party. They make deals and then they go with whoever they get the better deal from. So nothing really has changed. It's a tough politics. And the minute, by the way, the Sfarim get upset and they pull out, the coalition collapses, new elections are called. And I believe in Israel it's 4 times in 2 years. 4 times the coalition collapsed, and they had elections. So those were some reasons. There was also, Israel was struggling economically. I think that not that Begin did any better. Under Begin, I think it tanked further, but that was a reason. And another reason, which we've discussed before, It was because of the Yom Kippur War. The fact that the party in power, right, were caught by surprise by both Egypt and Syria, and 2,700 Jewish lives were lost, right? So heads had to roll. So we discussed they had a commission, and Golda Meir was vindicated, General Dayan was vindicated, but but other generals were not, and there was some bad feelings. There was some bad feelings. So they figured, the populace figured, why don't we give Menachem Begin the Likud party? Now, Likud would be considered right, and the Marach party, the Labour Party, would be considered left. Now, so when Begin came into power, there was a shift to the right. Until then, it was the left ruling, and it was a shift to the right. Now, and the religious people were very happy because Begin was a moderately religious fellow. In fact, Begin, when in the beginnings of Israel, excuse me, the beginnings of Israel, when he was hiding from Ben Gurion, he dressed up as a chassid and lived in Bnei Barak. So he was very familiar. So Begin was more religious. He was less secular than the others. So the religious party took their chance with him. Now, so in Israel, the way it works is you're either left or you're either right, and it's very different in the United States. In the United States, left could be social politics, socioeconomic politics, gay rights, and so many different progressive. That's left, and if you're opposed to it, you're right. Right? In Israel, it basically boils down to one thing: what to do with the territories that we got in the 1967 war. The 6-Day War, Israel became 4 times as large. They had territory in the south. They gained with the Sinai. They gained territory in the north, the Golan, and they gained territory on the east, which is Judea and Samaria, Jerusalem, etc. So what to do with it? The right will basically would give it up. The left, they say no. So, for example, Begin himself didn't call it West Bank because that he felt that kowtowed to the Arabs. Begin called it Judea Samaria, and most people on the right call it Judea and Samaria. If you call it Judea and Samaria, it means that you feel your heritage is there, and why should you give it up? You won it in a war. Now, it's interesting the way these politics work, because there's the right forms a coalition and the left forms a coalition. Each side keeps the other side honest. So basically, the left makes sure that that the right does not annex the territories. Remember, if you annex them, you're gonna have an influx, 40% additional Arabs. So the left makes sure you don't annex. No. These are territories we don't know. They're disputed territories. I don't use the term occupied because that's really buying into the marketing. But they're disputed territories, but you can't annex it. The right don't allow the left to give it away. Right? They fought that. So basically, that is why, from 1967 to 2021, there's really been no decision made because each one challenges the other. It's extremely complicated, and lives are at stake. So it seems to be the status quo seems to be better than making a radical decision. So that's what right versus left mean. Do you give up the land? Do you not give up the land? And there's a divide in that country, as there's a divide in this country about certain things, right? So the country's polarized, and it's always been polarized. Politics in Israel is probably worse than politics in the United States. Politics in the United States has reached a new level of vitriol, and you and me, right, lay people kind of get into it. It doesn't make any sense. But in Israel, everybody gets into it. Everybody, every single person gets into the politics of Israeli politics. Now, so Begin was the prime minister. So Begin, if you want to talk about Menachem Begin, first of all, he's a hero in my eyes, because so many feuds he had with Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion was quick to shoot on the Atalena, the ship. Begin said, "Don't shoot back. We're not going to kill Jews. We just survived the Holocaust. No killing of Jews." Begin was he kept his anger in check, even though he got angry. And Begin was erred on the side of caution. Begin was a fighter, though. He was a fighter. So Begin, let's talk about him. He is a tale of perseverance. If you ever want to be inspired by a person who basically, came to Israel with nothing, and he was a politician, and he became what he became, an icon. He fought the British, as we'll talk about. So here's the tale of perseverance. He dreamed, and people mocked him in the 20s. He said, "We're going to have land. I dream of Israel, that the Jews are going to have a land." And he was a staunch Zionist, and people thought, no one believed him, right? No one believed this man that there was going to be an Israel, but he knew, and 25 years later, he was proven correct. Right? He aligned himself with Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky was hard right. Jabotinsky was a warrior, and Jabotinsky had a prophecy. He said that the Jews in Europe are in a precarious position, and if we don't act quickly, Jews in Europe are going to be killed. There's going to be mass killing of Jews. Right? I guess he saw the climate, and Begin basically bought Jabotinsky's line, hook and sinker, and unfortunately, he was proven correct. So he was a man that was screaming from the rooftops that there's going to be a Holocaust. There's going to be a Holocaust. I don't know when. It's going to be 10 years or 20 years. But, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be prepared. Right? Right? Begin believed in violence against Britain. There's only way to get Britain, the United Kingdom, out, who have treated them unfairly. The Balfour Declaration was great, but then the White Paper came, they rescinded, right? And he just wanted them out. He felt that they didn't allow. So many Jews could have been saved if they would just have opened the borders of Israel to bring in a Jew. But they had a quota. Good morning. They had a good afternoon. They had a quota, and they even let less than the quota, right? And they turned around ships. They were. Right, so Begin had a hate, a visceral hate for the British. So while Ben Gurion, who was the other power, the opposition, diplomacy, let's make peace with the British, Begin was oh no, you kill one of us, we'll kill two of yours, and they killed Jewish soldiers in Begin's underground. Begin blew up the King David Hotel, right? He warned them first because he was a man of character, but he did bomb it. How he did it, guys, God knows how he got there, but he did bomb it, right? So he wanted the British out in a bad way. Right? Begin believed that there will be a time where Jews will be able to walk freely in the old city of Jerusalem, head up high, and approach the Western Wall, our holiest site. People laughed. They said that that's a stronghold of Jordan. It's the third holiest place in Muslim religion, culture, and it's never going to happen. But he believed. He's a man that believed. He believed in these type of things he believed in, and he dedicated his life to getting where he had to go. Right? He also believed, despite 19 years, he used to say, "I will be prime minister," and he was the butt of all jokes because, meanwhile, Labour Party had landslide win one after the other until it didn't. It was such an upheaval. So he believed. Right? And then, when he was prime minister, and he voted, people, Israel, especially the Labor Party, felt that this was just it happened once. This is a chance. It was luck. The stars were aligned, but it will never happen again. And it was just I forget the word. It was just just a one-time thing. They were wrong, because since then, since '77, Likud and Merach have been switching power back and forth. Sometimes Labour wins, sometimes Likud wins. Sometimes there's a unity government. Sometimes they have exactly 60 seats each. So now you have 120 seats, coalition of 60 and coalition of 60. So what they do is they call it a unity government, is where Labour is for 2 years and Likud is for 2 years. In fact, it just happened now, is with Benny Gantz and Bibi Netanyahu. So they decided to make a unity government, and Bibi said, "I'm going first." I think Bibi knew that the government was going to collapse again, and he deprived Gantz of becoming the prime minister. Right? So each one blocks the other, as I said, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. It was an incredible event because of this reason. Ben Gurion was he was a tough guy. I mean, they're all tough. You think of Shimon Peres, you think of Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon was younger, so maybe we'll take him out of the picture. But Shimon Peres, Yitzchak Shamir, right? Begin, Ben Gurion, right? These guys were tough. They had to be. They had to be. The school of hard knocks. So Ben Gurion was tough, and because for 19 years he reigned, and he reigned supreme, whatever his agenda was pushed through. Whatever he wanted was pushed through, and basically there was no contest. And then in 1977, Ben Gurion had to eat his hat, because Begin changed policies, and Ben Gurion, right? Ben Gurion tried to force his way, and Begin was a tremendous obstacle. Now they used to hate each other, but in politics they hated each other as politicians. But I don't know if there was any personal hate. They did hate each other. Ben Gurion more so than Begin. Begin reversed, but they had such different ideas, so that there was a hate, but they did come together. I mean, I don't think they ever best friends, but then it became a political adversary, and it wasn't so much a personal adversary. Personally, I don't know how these politicians do it. They could you could curse them out on a debate stage, and then after the debate, you go over, shake your hands, and everybody's smiling, and you get picked for a cabinet or a vice president. I don't know how it's done. I don't know. I would still be stuck in the debate department, but politicians, I guess they know how, or they've been trained, or I don't know, or you have to be such thick skin. I'm not sure which. Begin finally was able to stand up to Ben Gurion. And for Ben Gurion, it was a culture shock. It was a culture shock that he was no longer in charge. His generals were no longer in charge. His cabinet, right, no longer in charge. So, Yitzchak Shamir, by the way, was Likud. Right? Yitzchak Shamir was good. Shimon Peres was Labor. But these you see the divide of the. I'm not sure where Issa Harel stood. The founder of the Shin Bet on the Mossad. I don't know where he stood, but so Begin, or every single one of right? If you want something enough, you'll dedicate your time to it. You won't just say, okay, I want it, I want it, I want it. But like Begin, worked hard. And Begin had dreams and aspirations, unite the people as best as he could. And he really, everything he wanted, everything he dreamed of. Israel, excuse me, the old city, the Holocaust, unfortunately, proven true. Getting the British out, it was all came true. So you got to work for your dreams, and don't let anybody tell you no. God bless. Be well. Any questions, Rabbi at the Chai Center, and or here. Be well.